Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning. Parents, what if we could give you the power to transform your family into something absolutely amazing?
A family where everyone is healthy, gets along, loves Jesus, and has great purpose in life.
Hey, let us flip your thinking to unlock the power God has given you to create your own Crazy Cool family. Hello and welcome to the Crazy Cool Podcast. We have a very special guest today and just an awesome story of redemption, of life, of somebody just overcoming and has his own men's podcast. Let's welcome Chris Grainger. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, Don, how are you doing today, sir?
We're doing great, and Chris lives in North Carolina, a place I've always said I would live if I didn't live in the great state of Texas. Beautiful country out there, right, Chris?
Yeah, you can be in the beach in the morning and the mountains in the afternoon if you want to, right?
Wow, now you live in Wake Forest, right?
Yeah, just north of Wake Forest in a little town called Franklinton.
Now, is Wake Forest, is that the college Wake Forest too, or is that?
Originally it was, but then the Wake Forest University moved out. They're actually in Winston-Salem now, but originally when the college started, it was in the little town of Wake Forest.
Got it. It reminds me of ACC basketball.
We're in the heart of that, man. Duke, Carolina State, it's all right here, right where we're at.
And you know what's crazy about that from Texas? We don't really see that, but I mean, everything's right together there. All those schools,
Oh, yeah.
North Carolina State, North Carolina, Duke,
Yep.
Duke and North Carolina, 8 miles from each other.
Yeah, like 15-minute ride or something like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
Well, we don't want to get into basketball discussions in this podcast, but it's just, but glad to, so ladies, I'm sorry, this is going to be more of a men's podcast, but also for you as well, because Chris is going to tell a story of overcoming so much with his family, with life, with his children, and such a touching story, such a real story of just God's work in his life, which is going to be a male and female thing. But Chris, before we get started, and you have your own podcast. Tell us a little bit about that before we get started with your personal story.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And thank you. It's called The Lion Within Us. So it's a podcast. We serve Christian men. We talk about basically 3 areas: health, wealth, and self. And it's just for leadership for Christian men out there, just to try to give them inspiration, ideas, just some light, because there's so much dark content out there. So finally, I learned the podcasting game in my primary job, and this year God said, okay, now I want you to use it to glorify me. So we started The Lion Within Us and having amazing conversations with wonderful people, and the feedback's been great. The downloads have been really, really positive. It's just been an encouragement, and we're just trying to be a ministry to help guys out there be the leaders they're predestined to be, and lead at home and lead at work, and just start stepping up. So it's
and you're talking about health, So if you see Chris, he's really thin. He's just a very fit, shape looking guy. But if you look back and the podcast started this year, so you've been doing it about a year, right?
Yeah, it was a podcast. We launched The Lion in January. So
this year. So
yeah,
brand new podcast. And but also if you go back and look at his podcast and some of his stuff, you see that at one time, 330 pounds?
Yeah, 330, man. 330 when my oldest daughter, Chloe, when she was born in 2010. So I was carrying around another person.
So one of the things is just a story of redemption, just from losing weight and getting in shape, and and overcoming some health issues, things like that. But that was about 2010, and so let's just kind of start with at that point in your life, where are you? And let me back up just a minute. In the podcast realm we're in right now, Crazy Cool Family, we're talking a lot about, the top of our Crazy Cool Family house, which says pursue God. We have 3 commitments that we look at for families: pursue God, build relationships, create culture. And we put pursue God at the top because as Chris's story is going to tell us, when you start pursuing God and God starts doing a work in your life, that's when he can really start doing a work in your family as well, and can overcome anything. We say at Crazy Cool Family that a couple of things that the best fathers and mothers are first sons and daughters of the King. and that the best thing you can do for your family is to present them the healthiest version of you. And
Right.
so the healthier you are. And so we're going to see that. So take us back to early 2010s,
Yep.
whenever, and what is your thought process of life? Where are you and what's going on then?
Sure. Three words. I got this. And that's what most guys think. I mean, they think I got this, and that's three of the most dangerous words we have as
Now,
men.
at this time, you're going to church. You're an engineer.
Mhm,
You're working. You've got young children. You've got
mhm,
a wife. That
mhm.
the wife that you had before this wife that you have now.
Right.
And so, and you said, you were just kind of putting on a front, right? Hey, I'm
Mhm.
blessed. Everything's good.
Oh yeah, it's the old, the classic church line. How you doing? Blessed and highly favored. That's what you're gonna say. That's what you tell people when you don't want them to really know what's going on. I'm blessed and highly favored. So for me now, that's a flag. When somebody actually says that, I'm like, how are you really doing? I'll have that conversation. But God was not at the head. He wasn't at the head of my house. I mean, I was a believer. I became a believer when I was 16, but I never really had the men in my life and the people in my life to help guide me and disciple me, to teach me. And then go to college, you drift away, as many people drift away from the faith when they go to college. And then, next thing you know, you get married and you just it's out there, God's out there, but it's not, he definitely wasn't in charge. He was not leading me. And I think that was, looking back 2010, I felt when I held Chloe for the first time, I felt a change. I think as many guys out there, when they hold their first kid, I know your oldest is a daughter too, so maybe you can relate.
Right, yeah.
When I held Chloe, I just felt it like, okay, I'm here. There's more purpose to life than just me. This is now I'm in charge of this beautiful little blessing. And then he blessed me again in 2012 with another daughter. And it's just, but it's still at the same time, I wasn't letting him guide me. I still had this, I got this, and trying to do it on my own. And that's what I really think. Uh, if I can speak to any of your listeners, you don't got this. You may think you do, but
Yeah.
until you put God at the head and follow him and let him guide you through the Holy Spirit, that's what it's all about. And I think that's really the biggest lesson I've learned looking back.
Yeah, and so you're walking through, 2012. You've got two kids now, and you've been married for how many years?
Yeah, we got married 2009. So 2009 we got married, and then had Chloe a year later.
Still kind of walking through. I've got this, but in church
Mhm.
um, with two young children, and then you get kind of a shock
Yeah,
about 2015, right? Tell us about that.
yeah, got a shock. I mean, it's my oldest daughter started kindergarten. We got her into in charter school in North Carolina, which is kind of a lottery. When we lucked up and got her in that school, wonderful school, and all of a sudden, my wife was gone. She wanted to leave, and so we went through a pretty big trial. I remember
Was
staying,
this a big surprise to you when that happened?
yeah, because it all happened within a matter of about a week. I could,
Wow.
I knew something was going on, and then I'm not going to go through all the details, but ultimately, it just the whole story is crazy because God puts these people in your place in your life for a reason. So when we moved to North Carolina, we moved, and our next door neighbor was a lawyer. And she and I and her husband, we all of us connected. Well, then they moved away. So in 2015, just I don't know, call it the Holy Spirit. I just knew, all right, something is off. So I called my friend, our old neighbor, and I seeked her counsel. I was like, what do I do? And she walked me through the process of, okay, here's what you need to do. And I whatever she did, man, it was like Moses and the Ten Commandments. I followed it. I mean, it was like, okay,
Right.
I'm gonna do what she says, and I'm gonna tell you what, Don, it was crazy because when we went into to the courtroom, I was prepared. The judge heard both stories. The judge heard my heart, and the judge said, "These daughters, they need your supervision. They need their dad." Now, my ex-wife still gets, visitation from time to time, but for the bulk of the majority, they're with their dad, and that never happens. I mean, you never really hear that,
Yeah.
and I think that happened for a reason, and then from that moment on, of me, I remember standing in the kitchen with a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, like
Girls at that.
girls, like,
Yeah.
what am I gonna do? And so I remember taking a daddy hair class, and because I told myself, I'm like, you know what? I'm a single dad, but that's okay. My girls are gonna be girls, and they may be a little more tomboyish, but that's okay. We're gonna do that stuff too.
And I super admire that because I've had 4 girls, and it was the one thing that I said. I just said, I'm not doing hair. I will brush their hair, and I tried to do ponytails a little
Yeah.
bit. It was so ugly, and when I brushed their hair, they always got mad because I brushed it too hard. And I was like, so I super admire that you took a hair class, but that because I never could do hair. It was the one thing. I was running around with 4 girls, all different ages, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
hey, you got to do that.
That class was funny because the guy started off with like ponies, and I was like, "Hey, boss man, come here." So he came over. I'm like, "Look, bro," I said, "I appreciate where you're at with all these other dads, but my goal in this class, I want to learn how to French braid, and I want to know how to do an Elsa braid. Can you teach me those 2 things?" And he was looked at me like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "I'm dead serious. I got the pony stuff. Let's move on to the 200, 300 level class stuff, man." So yeah, he jumped on and he taught me that stuff, so I was able to do that. So yeah, I've been
That's
able
awesome.
to always hook the
I
girls
just
up.
want to stop there for a second and stop down. So literally, and guys and ladies, we all have struggles in our family. But what I want to see is, and I want to start down this path a little bit because it seems like if I'm hearing this right, that within a few months,
Mhm.
you went from I'm married, I got this, we're in church, I'm losing a little weight, maybe, whatever that is, you're starting down that road, and I'm an engineer and I'm married and I got 2 kids to, oh my goodness, I'm single.
Mhm.
Got 2 kids I'm taking care of, 5 and 3, and my life has been it's totally upside down.
Totally.
Is that a fair way to put
That's
that few
comp
months?
completely, and I mean, I wouldn't even say a few months. I mean, it's more like a week or 2. I mean, it flipped that quickly where she was at the house, she was gone because she had found someone else, and so she moved in with him, and, there's just it was just craziness. I mean, we had just bought a new car, and I remember going back to and a nice car. I mean, we bought an Infinity. I mean, this thing was the nicest car I've ever bought in my life, and we couldn't afford it, but we still bought it. And I remember going back to the Infinity dealership and just my head hung low, just humbled myself and just begged them, like, "Will you please just take this back?" And crying with the salesman, and bless them, they did, and we were able to get out of that vehicle. But just those types of moments where you're broken and you don't got this, and I remember the first time that she got her visitation, and I'm sitting in our house that we had built with our 2 daughters, and I'm there alone. And Don, there's nothing as like makes you feel more broken than being in a big house by yourself. You can't talk to your kids. Your wife is gone, and it's just you and your thoughts. And that's a place where Satan runs wild and can really mess with you. And then that's in those moments is when I really started. Okay, I need to get my life, and I got to get aligned with God because that's the only
Well,
way
and
I'm gonna
let's
survive.
explore that a little because I mean, one of the things you said is this is where Satan runs wild,
Mhm.
and so one of the things I ask parents that are watching, that are listening to this, and is where is it Satan's running wild? What is it that triggers you to where Satan runs wild? And
Mhm.
I mean, we all have those areas. It doesn't. I mean, yours is a dramatic one that happened in the course of a few weeks there, but
Mhm.
so at that point, I remember for me, one of my when it wasn't Satan running wild, but it's really where it faced me was my first year of marriage
Mm.
because I got married. My wife brought a 2-year-old Molly, my oldest daughter, to the marriage. So
Right.
all of a sudden, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I changed jobs during that time. We moved. I mean, just all these stresses of life. And I said, look, I got to figure out what I live for.
Right.
And that really, that first year, so and what it led me to do was start to study, is my faith real? How did it, and it really impacted me, because at the end of that first year of marriage, I decided in a very deep way that I was going to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
How did that, you're at that, that point where the devil can run wild, and that's what happens to people sometimes. They reject God, or they run away from God. They run to things that
Right.
are different. God, it sounds like that, and I don't know your whole story yet. We're going to hear it. That you ran to God at that point. Why? How?
Because I had nowhere else to go. I mean, I was it. I was broken, and at that point, I had to cling to something that was real, and I knew, just from again going to church when I was 16, being saved, that Jesus could help me. I just needed to humble myself and to be able to come to Him. But and it was in that moment. But I'll tell you, ultimately, where it all started coming together, and it kind of started coming into focus, if you will, was when I met my wife, and then because all of a sudden
Your current wife.
my current wife, and my bride, she's my best friend because she grew up in the faith, and she has a strong family structure around her, um, and she and I, it was just immediate. Okay, she's much further, and Becca, she knows this. She's much further than me in her theology and her understanding of Scripture. I mean, she just can, verse after verse, story after story. She's my my balance point, if you will, when we do Bible study. If I'm struggling with something, she can help me. But she, at the same time, she recognizes I'm the spiritual leader, and she's my partner, and she has taught me so much. And I think it was through meeting her and being able to see what a true um, a Christian courtship, if you, because we weren't married, but we courted the right way. I mean, it's simple stuff, Don. Like, we didn't have sleepovers. We didn't sleep together. There was none of that. I mean, none of that. It was all pure. I couldn't hold her hand. I still pick on her about this. It was like maybe 5 dates before I even was allowed to hold her hand. I mean, she was
Right.
just she had these values, and she didn't waver from them. And I never met anyone really like that. That was that lived it out. Again, I've been around the blessed and highly favored people my whole life, but never around people who were just really
So
walking it
how
out.
long, how long was that from when you went through your divorce, and were
Yep.
there that night until you met your wife?
That was about a year and a half. That's where I
So
was.
so during that, before that year, and it's also interesting to me because you told me this before, that she was 28, she's 8 years younger than you, never been married.
Yep.
So, and I'm just curious what that was like when you went to her dad, and so because her dad was a pastor, right?
Yeah, well, he had gotten out the ministry at the time, but uh,
But
I,
before you go there, like, what was that year and a half like? And what did you do? Because obviously, when you met her, she saw something. I mean,
yeah,
here's a guy with two kids. I mean, if you would have been in the ditch, drinking every night,
yeah,
she's not gonna be attracted to you.
right.
So what happened in that year and a half?
For one, I learned how to be, a parent, and how to be, you know, to take care of what God has put in front of me. And I also learned, what, I can't do it all alone. So I was able to connect with some wonderful people that were able to help me parent and teach me some things. And I just learned in that year and a half to humble myself, ask questions, and that I don't got this, and just keep trying to build relationships with people that are running towards God versus running away from Him. And I think that was a big one for me. Is okay. I was really careful about the relationships in my life and the people that I allowed to speak into it. And then I think God just, he put a hedge of protection around me, for one, during that year and a half, to be able to really let the voices come in that needed to, and keep out the ones that didn't. And so
Now,
that
you were in a
that was a
church. You were in a church at the time. How did
yes.
the church respond to your situation?
Oh, they were, so our pastor and our associate pastor, they rallied beside me, and when they heard what had happened, and I met with them, both of them, in their office, And I told him, what guys, here's the story. I need to know, do I have your support? And they said, you have 100% of this church's support, and we want to be there, when this goes to trial. And actually, our associate pastor, who is the head pastor now, he testified at the trial. He
Mhm.
went on. He's on the record on my behalf as a character witness, and and that's something I'll remember for him. I mean, because that type of testimony, uh, is one thing for you to get up there and say something about yourself. It's another thing for someone like that who's been walking in the faith. Obviously, he's been a pastor his whole life, and they really stood beside me. So I can't, going through something like that without a church family. I don't know how you could do it. I really don't know how you could do it.
Well, and I think that's a great. That's one of the reasons I wanted to stop down on that a little bit. Is one, just that in the lowest of the lows, you talked about relationships in the church.
Hmm.
And so often when we're down like that or things happen to us, we want to run away from the key relationships. We want to run away from the church because
Right.
we're ashamed.
Right.
What did I mean? I'm sure that you felt some kind of guilt of what was happening with, or
Mhm.
blame for what was happening with your ex-wife. She just left you for another guy, and just all the emotions that go through that. But yet I love it, and that you turned to relationships and you turned to the church and
Mhm.
turned to God. I mean, not
Right.
really not in that order. And because I
Right.
also know that you really developed a love for scripture. I kind of, when I was asking about things, you kept going to, man, I just read my Bible.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, for me, like, for example, I would say the Bible, but also some authors and things like that just really influenced my life. But it sounds like for you, it was really just scripture as well.
Yeah. Really, just scripture. I mean, just because, I mean, and I'm a big reader too. I'm looking in front of me right now, a stack of books about 3 foot tall, crazy cool families at the top of that stack. And so I'm really big on that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, that is, you want to get good at your finances, you want to get good in your health, you want to get good in your marriage. God's word's where it's at. It's the ultimate guide. And that just, in those quiet times where the girls were gone, and I'm in that house by myself, I had that's where I went to, and those it was through that time, and I mean, that's really evolved over time, where now it's a daily. I look forward to reading the Bible. I look forward to reading scripture. I'm making an intentional act to where it's an everyday occurrence, because I'm gonna learn something. If I go in seeking to learn and to find, he's gonna reveal something to me every time.
Well, and I just, as we move on to there's more to come in this story that we're doing here, but I just want to, I always want to stop down and help our audience understand that key points that we learn from things. And one of them is just that the tendency is to turn away from God, turn away
Mhm.
from relationships, turn away from the church. And if
Right.
you're going through that place where the devil's running rampant in your life, I hope you have a church. I hope you have relationships that are safe enough, like
Right.
your pastor was, that you
Right.
can turn and go to them and say, and if not, go find them. If you can't find anybody, call me. We'll figure it out. I mean,
That's
just
right.
whatever it is, email Chris and we'll figure it out, because, that's where, when you're going through those things of where the devil's running rampant, the church, that's why God made the church. That's why God made relationships. That's why God made his word, for
Right.
you to turn into that. So I love that. I love that piece of that. And then you meet your wife. What's her
Mhm.
name?
Rebecca.
Rebecca. I never did ask you what her name was. And so Rebecca is this uh, younger
Yeah.
lady, never been married. I
Yeah.
still want to know, like, how, when you went to Dad, how did that work out?
Yeah, I'm a good salesman, Don. So I had to sell Becca. So she worked with my father. Actually, she worked at the same business, and so he set up this meeting where I could meet her, and just and from there it was just, I took a leap of faith. I asked her out. She took all day to answer me back. She finally answered me back, and then we went on a date. It was awkward because we went to this we went to an Applebee's. We had the most awkward meal ever. And I was like, let's just go somewhere and talk. And we ended up talking for 4 hours, and
Oh, wow.
we've just been together ever since. And her family, just embraced us. They embraced our girls. once we decided for her to meet the girls, we were very cautious on how we moved forward because I didn't want to introduce someone to the girls that I wasn't sure about. But I was I knew immediately, and I was like, I'm gonna marry this girl, and so we just everything that her mom told her not to talk about on the first date, we talked about it. So she's just, and she'll laugh when she hears this episode, but I mean, it was just an immediate, this I knew. I had that peace. And then in September of 2017, we set our vows, and ever since then it's been a journey, and it's been a lot of ups and a lot of downs through our own marriage that we've learned from. I don't know if you want me to share any of that stuff. I'd be glad to for your listeners as well.
Well, I mean, let's think about that. So you go through, so now she becomes a mom.
Yes.
And I'm sure she adapted to that pretty well. If I'm picturing that one,
Yeah.
I
It
got
was that it was a bit of a
2023.
struggle for her, though. I mean, because she come in so Chloe and Ava were, I guess, 7 and 5, so still very young, formable ages. So that first year was tough of trying to figure out the dynamics of where she fits in, because basically she left her family. Her family was about an hour and a half from us, so she didn't have to move far, but she did move.
Mhm.
She's with a new husband, got these 2 kids running around. She's in a new area, so she doesn't know like the local area. So, she had left her job. She was in college, finishing up her MBA at Liberty. So she was doing school. So she had something there, but it was a tough year for her. It was a tough year just figuring that stuff out. But we figured it out together, and we ended up moving and getting, we needed our own place, so that helped too. Just we sold our house and we got into our house, which is kind of like quote unquote our house now. And just those little steps that we took together, but we were always just all in for each other, whatever we needed. And still to this day, like, we communicate well. We have days that are better than others, but we're always, I know that she's got my back and she knows I got her back. And we face some really tough times uh, together through that. And, um, we wanted to have children. And so got married 2017, and in 2019, we were able to get pregnant, and we ended up having what's called a missed miscarriage at about 9-10 weeks. So we had that was a really tough blow for us, where we had this hope and then it was gone. And then we were able to get pregnant again, and we were due in May of 2020. So we got pregnant like right around the pandemic, right? So it's,
Right.
we couldn't have showers or baby showers or any of like the gatherings. I mean, you remember
Mhm.
back when the pandemic first started, like our church shut down. All we had online church, but that was it. So I mean, isolation at its biggest, and we got a baby on the way, but we made do with it. We kind of, the church blessed us with a shower. They kind of like a drop off type thing. And then she was due in May, so 39 weeks, right at the due date. We're waiting for Faith to join us. Her name was Faith May, and my wife just wakes me up one night. She's like, I don't really feel Faith moving. I'm like, well, look, just, our girls were upstairs sleeping. I was like, just go check it out. And if you feel like you want me to come to the hospital, I'll come. She's like, no, let me just go by myself. You don't wait, don't, let's not wake the girls. And then, so she left, went to the hospital, and she called me about 30 minutes later. And she said the words I'll never forget. She said, we lost Faith. And I just remember laying on the bathroom floor, reeling, and just what do you do in
Mhm.
those moments, right? And called my pastor, called my parents, and called my pastor, and he prayed with me over the phone. And then I went to the hospital. So my parents came over. So my girls woke up the next morning. When our girls woke up, me and Becca were gone. So they just thought, well, she went in labor. And I told my parents, just do not tell them. Like, I got to be the one to tell them. So, we went through the process of having our baby and being induced and having to do all that. And somehow I made it through that. And then we came back home and had to share with our daughters that you know, we lost Faith. And the whole I've done a whole episode called, quiet delivery rooms, where I share that entire story. So we lost her 1 week to the day after we lost her. We lost our dog that was like my wife's dog, but like, he's the reason we came together. We lost her. And then 2 weeks after that, my wife lost her job at a local church. So you talk about like, boom, like
Mm.
haymaker after haymaker after haymaker just hitting us. And we're at one point, I was saying to her, like, I'm afraid to ask what's next. Like, what is going on? But it
And
was
you're in the middle of the pandemic as well.
no support, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Nobody could come over, really. I mean, it was just like, oh my gracious. Like, I remember dropping, we had our daughter cremated. So I can't make this up. I'm taking our dead dog that literally, he's the reason we came together, because there's some pictures she took at the beach and I saw her, and that's how we got connected. So I'm taking our dead dog to the guy who cremates dogs. I met him at the cemetery, at the funeral home, dropped off the dog and picked up my daughter. And I was sitting there like, this is the worst country song on the planet. Like,
Wow.
this is like, nobody would believe this if I put it in a country song, right? But it was just, we decided, you know what? We lost our daughter, we lost our dog, we lost our job. Satan, you're not going to win. We're not going to run to you. We're not turning from God. We are going to cling to God. And in those moments, we clung to each other, our family, and he carried us, because there was no way I could carry us, and there's no way she could carry us. He carried us through those moments. And that's the only thing I can tell you that got us through it.
Yeah. So again, like, you're in the pandemic at that point. So really, it's just phone calls of people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Because
that's it. Our church did make one of the most impactful things that they made for us was a little prayer box. And it's a beautiful little box. It's one of the gentlemen at the church, he made it, and they've packed it. So the people in the church want to know, how can, we want to do something. So they were like, write down your prayers. So and it's in our kitchen right now, and it's a box full of just heartfelt prayers for our family during the most difficult time. They did set up a meal train. We ate for like months. We didn't have to worry about food for months. How Baptists are. We're going to eat, man.
yeah.
So that it's just, they found ways to minister to us and to bless us, during that difficult time.
Well, and the story continues. It's like, if we look at it, 2015 it goes down, 2017 it goes up, 2020 it goes down.
Yep.
Now today you have a daughter, a new daughter.
We do. So I mean, my wife, after we lost faith, God basically gave her, September will be your redemption, and we had no clue what that meant. We got pregnant again. Well, she got pregnant. I didn't get pregnant. I wasn't involved.
Yeah, been there, done that. It's not a we thing.
That's right. It's not a we thing. She was there, but I was participant. But anyway, so we got in, and our due date was September, I believe the 4th or the 6th. I never can remember that. But anyway, our baby was due in September, and because she was a high risk pregnancy, they ended up taking her early. So on August 21st, Lily Grace, she blessed our family, and that whole month of September.
22, when was that?
21.
21. Okay,
Yep.
got.
So that whole month of September 2021 was the mountaintop again. We had a baby, first of all, in a delivery room that's crying, which was awesome. To have a crying baby in a delivery room. And that whole month of September, our daughters were just head over heels, because they saw us come home with the empty car seat, and now they got to saw us come home with the full car seat, and it was just that month was just unbelievable, and it's been a crazy ride, raising her. She's 10 months old now, and then in November, I'm not sure when this is going to release, but in November we're expecting a son, and we found that out. So Judah Levi is his name, and we'll be prayerfully meeting him in November to join this crazy cool family that we're building.
There you go. So, man, what an incredible story of just perseverance. As you continue to hold on, and there's it, obviously in any situation, divorce or whatever, there's never, it's never totally one-sided. But I mean,
Right.
you were walking through a lot of stuff, and certainly with the stillborn child and the miscarriage. I mean, people underestimate sometimes the effect of miscarriages on our families, but
Hmm.
that's something to overcome as well.
Right.
My wife and I went through a couple of those, and particularly in the very beginning of our marriage, and it was just but it's funny when we went through it. It was literally I think the first year of our marriage, maybe, um, and my wife tells it was the first time that she could, we were young in our marriage, and she looked to me and said, "I can trust that guy," because
Mhm.
because because of the way we, for the first time in our marriage, it was like this. Even your wife, I love the story of she left her home, she became a mom,
Mhm.
she moved, quit her job. I
Mhm.
mean, those first couple of years of marriage, especially when you become a mom as well, and I can relate to that, becoming a dad, that's hard.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you got this this person across from you that she's used to being single all the time, and all of a sudden there's somebody there every day, and
Right.
and they do odd things that you didn't know before
Yeah.
you got married. And
That's right. That's right.
they don't put the lid on the toothpaste or whatever it is,
That's
just
right.
little things that just are like, why, who is this person?
That's
And
right.
so but in the midst, and then going through a stillborn child, how did you and your wife, newly married to today, how have you guys walked through that?
Side by side. I mean, it really, it's just been one of those things where some days she'll have, there's a blanket. It's face blanket. Whenever I see that out, I know my wife's having a hard day. And so I'm really in tune to, okay, if I
Are you
see
talking
that,
about the faith? You said a faith blanket. I thought you said face blanket at first, but I mean,
no,
so you're saying there's the blanket that you had for faith.
for faith. So when she was born, we wrapped her, we had a blanket. It was actually the blanket that I was wrapped in when I was born. We took it to the hospital as our intention was that was going to be her blanket, when we brought her home in.
Mhm.
But we decided, even though, you know what, uh, it's still her blanket. So we wrapped her in that blanket, and that's what we, for that night, we had one night with her. So that one night, we made all our memories the best we could of that situation. But whenever I see that blanket out, I know that that's a tough day for my wife, or something's triggered it. And then for me, she, she knows if she sees me walking by, and a lot of times I'll pick up, Faith, we have her, we had her cremated, so we have her right there in the living room. If
Mhm.
I pick her up, we just talk about it, and we're open about it. And we recently went on our family vacation last week, and it was the first vacation that we had with Lily. And Becca said, I want Faith to go with us. So Faith went with us. And I mean, some
Wow.
people may think that's weird, and that's okay because we're used to weird. And we lean into the weird. And so it's just we're open about what the other person needs to process. We do that because I tell people all the time, couples that grieve together grow together. And so you're either gonna take these situations, these hurdles, these trials in life, and let them pull you closer together as a marriage, as a couple, or they can be a wedge, and you have a choice. But if you lean into it and grow together and let Him lead you, and Jesus lead you, there's so many blessings that can come.
Well, and you certainly had some adversity to overcome, to where you had to rely on God yourself and your relationships in the church. And I love it. Just first thing you did was call your pastor. That,
Mhm.
and because that was your rock.
Mhm.
And depending on the church you have, it might be a pastor, it may be your small group leader, it could
Right.
be just your mentor or somebody that's in your life. That for you, that was your pastor, and I think that's awesome. I just went through a trial myself, business wise. And, one of the first things I did was I talked to my pastor about it. And
Mhm.
he actually was kind enough. He said, "Hey, let's schedule a lunch." And in the lunch, he just said, "This is not who you are. He just spoke life into me. I never will forget that because it was just, I was hurt by this person and,
Right.
and questioning whether I had, what I'd done and if I was, and he just said, no, that's not who you are. And
Right.
it was so uplifting. I just walked out there thinking, okay, game on, let's go, and
Right.
I just want to finish this for the guys, especially
Yeah.
in the midst of all this, you're working full time.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes, that, and what was it like going through, you got, is it the same job you've had the whole time or so you've been working for the same company? That's kind of what I thought, that you'd been there for a while.
Yeah.
But in the midst of it all, so what's work like going through all this from 2015 to 2022?
Yeah. I mean, 2015 was the crazy one. So I went to my mentor. He was my man. He's my manager. He's still my manager now. But I just went to him and I said, "Here's what's going on." And I was at the time I was in charge of a pretty big division of our company. I was like, "I don't know if I can dedicate 100% of me to this, right now, because I got to get through this trial. Literally, got to get through this trial."
Yeah.
He was the vice president. He sent an email out to our group and basically said, anything you would come to Chris for until further notice, you come to me, and I'm going to be supporting him through something he's working through. I mean, left it very vague because I was ashamed, man. It was one of those things like I didn't even want to talk about it because I was just in the middle of it. So when we got through the trial, the custody trial, I was able to share it with people. Okay, because I felt like that point, okay, I had a little bit of closure, if you will. Okay, here's where I'm at now, but he just stepped in. I did work as I could, but he stepped in and he basically put his arm around me and says, "I got you," and he was there, for that. During the pandemic, it was a little bit easier because everybody's working remote. So I had, remote work hours. So I was able to do things, just modify my work hours. But that 2015 time was a very special time because it just goes to show too, people don't leave bad companies. They leave bad bosses and relation. It's all about relationships at the end of the day. And when you're in a good role in a good company and they care about you, that type of stuff can come to fruition. So that's something that looking back was really big to help me, during that time.
Well, as we kind of wrap this up, I think I said that 5 minutes ago. But anyway, but I think that, one of the things I want to just tie it all up in is that, one of the things you just said was, I was ashamed.
Mm.
I felt, bad about what was happening. There's so often in our lives, we have things, another thing you said before was the devil was running rampant,
Mhm.
that we all have areas that we're ashamed of and that the devil runs rampant in our lives. And what he does is with that is he wants to isolate us.
Right.
And, in case after case over the last really, 12 years, if you will. I mean, but even going back, because this is starting to change even before you're the divorce, but it's
Right.
it really happens. It accelerates past that. Is that in those difficult circumstances, and these are gut wrenching circumstances you went through, Chris. I mean,
Mhm.
not I don't have a divorce testimony to give.
Right.
I don't have a stillborn child testimony to give, but in the midst of all that, you're turning to relationships.
Mhm.
You're going to people and saying, "Hey, this is what's going on in my life. Will you help me?"
Right.
And you mentioned the humility of that, and so I just want that to be the theme that comes out of this podcast is wherever you are, whoever's listening to this podcast, you may be a young person. It's funny, we have kids listening to this podcast now. Their parents say it's safe enough to where,
Right.
that they can listen to it. And, my daughter listens to the podcast with me or whatever, because, but with that, who are you going to turn to when life, and it doesn't have to be horrible things, but just getting it out in the open, asking people for help, and then, turn to God. That seems to me just this theme that's just really been transformative in your life.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you have to, we call them the lion's den for our group. I mean, you have to have those people in your life that they care, and that you're vulnerable enough to they can know really what's going on in your life, and then that you listen to too. We're not looking for yes men. We don't need that. There's enough of those guys out there. We need people that can sit you down and like your pastor told you, that's not your calling. This is, I mean, just to have direct, unfiltered, um, you know, Christ-centered, loving feedback, but that's what helps us grow.
Yeah.
And we don't need.
What was the guy? This guy says, "I'm blessed," and what was the?
Oh, blessed and highly favored. That's right.
And highly favored. So that no, watch for that trigger. Men, don't say that. Okay, don't
That's
say
right.
that in church this Sunday. No, but yeah, so and then let's talk a little bit as we finish just about the website you have is and we'll put some of these links in the show notes as well. But the lionwithin.us, right? Is that your website?
Yes, sir.
And there's all kinds of stuff in there. You've got the podcast for sure, and but you've also got a blog that you do, and you've also got some resources in there. Really around the resources around. I love the course that you have that's around the 3 ideals: the health, wealth, and
self.
Self. There you go. Couldn't find that one. And the self meaning more of the spiritual aspect of things. And so just a lot of good stuff in there. And even then, and the podcast as well. And you even do some coaching, right?
Yes, sir. Do some coaching as well, and have some Bible study groups going on. And we're building right now. This year is just building the foundation for what we're trying to do. Ultimately, we want to launch a community next year in 2023. So we're trying to get a lot of resources built up. I'm building courses. There's a course on personal finance that I just finished recording that we're editing right now. Has an ebook that goes along with it. There's a course coming up on envy that I want to do, envy versus contentment. There's courses around patience that I'm thinking about. So we have these ideas of courses that I'll be building over the rest of this year, and just trying to put content out there that again serves guys well, that's going to help them grow, be better husbands, better dads, show up at work better, take care of their finances and their careers better, take care of their mind and their body better, all the things that we need to do, because if we keep all those things in check, then we can do whatever he's called us to do. Because he doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. So once we get that call, you need to be ready to jump in and do and to act. So we try to cover all those different areas and just try to serve guys the best that we can.
Yeah, I love it, the lion within, because I truly believe that every person, but in this case, we're talking about men that you're focused on with your podcast, every man has this lion within, that there is just a purpose God has out of our identity, out of our relationship with God, that he's going to give us this purpose and this confidence that comes. And I love the idea of just the lion within. And so we'll put the links in our show notes. And so Chris, again, just thanks for coming on and sharing your story of faith. And hey, men and women, if you're in that situation to where you're ashamed of things, if you're struggling with things, find your relationships, find your church, find your God, because bring it into the light, because that's where God's going to be able to heal and be able to be a story of redemption, like again, like Chris says, even in his podcast and things, not perfect, still walking through. There's at the very end, there's a whole podcast Chris has where it's one of his most listened to ones, where he's going through an anxiety attack as he does the podcast. So it's super real. And I think that's also the transparency is super important. So Chris, thanks for being here with us.
It's an honor, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And as always, parents, go be crazy. crazycoolfamily.com.